I'm ready if you're ready.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 17th, 2024 Hanford Advisory Board Virtual CaRM and LIDS Subcommittee meetings. My name is Lindsay Summers, and I am the DDFO for the Hanford site. I'd just like to identify a few reminders before we get started. The first one is this meeting will be conducted in accordance with the requirements of the Federal Advisory Committee Act. And the second one is that each member has a joint responsibility for assuring that the operating ground rules are observed and discussions are conducted in a respectful manner. I appreciate your attendance today, and I look forward to the robust meeting and the advice. Josh, Tom?
Thank you. A couple of administrative items before we launch in. I'd like to notify everyone that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the Hanford site YouTube channel. Because we don't have a sign-in sheet, being remote, I would like everyone to sign in the Teams chat with their name and affiliation. That'll serve as our virtual sign-in. And just a general, Teams best practice. Please leave your microphone muted when you're not talking, so we don't have to hear, garbage day, background noise, toilets flushing, etc. Thank you. And Tom, to you.
Okay, so this meeting is a joint meeting, and I guess we have Richard here. Is Becky available, or did Becky joining today too? Or I didn't have to.
I only see a couple of phone numbers up there. Is any of them Becky?
Okay. Well, if Becky joins in a little bit later, that'd be good. But we at least have some leadership from both committees. So the whole point of this meeting is to consider the Transuranic advice once again. This advice went to the full board last August, and because of the timing of the WIP permit renewal, it got kicked back to committee for update based on, the fact that the permit was now being finalized and it wasn't an arm wave anymore. So the IM team had a couple meetings since then to sort of iron out some details, streamline the advice, and reflect the changes to the WIP permit. And you got that about 2 weeks ago in your inbox. So I guess the big picture is all of the transuranic waste, which is basically plutonium, pretty much. There's a couple other elements in there, but is supposed to go to deep geologic repository. And right now there's only one deep geologic repository operational, and that's the waste isolation pilot plant in New Mexico. The waste isolation pilot plant takes all the waste from all over the complex, and they've asked all of the different sites to help them come up with what's known as a legacy waste plan. The idea here is that this legacy waste, which is undefined, will have priority for one of the rooms that they can fill with waste at WIP, to the extent practicable. And so what we're trying to do is help the TPA agencies define what legacy waste means at Hanford, and maybe recommend some milestones associated with that. There are a couple different flavors of transuranic waste at Hanford. One of them is waste that was placed after 1970. And that waste is covered under the M91 milestone series. There's requirements for getting that waste to Carlsbad, New Mexico, and getting it out of the ground and packaged. There's other transuranic or potential transuranic waste that was put in place before 1970, and that won't become transuranic waste until it's dug up. So if there's a remediation that has some high plutonium soils, that could generate additional transuranic waste when it happens. And one thing the advice is asking the TPA agencies to do is to really sharpen their pencils and estimate how much of that there is. So WIP knows how much to expect. It's like we've been invited to a party and we want to RSVP. We want to make sure that we tell them we're bringing 50 people, not 300, so they know how many seats to set for us. What am I missing on the IM team? Are there any other bits to this?
I think that sounded like a good idea of the path. I can start
No.
going over the content
Oh,
whenever you're ready.
yeah, the one other piece is right now the WIP permit is on a 10-year cycle, sort of like Hanford's operating permit with ecology. So right now WIP has been approved to operate till 2032, and it's expected that that permit will be renewed again until the mission's over. But just in case, we also recommend that DOE develops a plan for a transparent and equitable process to identify sort of an additional WIP 2 in case WIP 1 doesn't have enough room for us. So I'm assuming everybody had a chance to read the advice. First, I want to go through and just check to see if anyone has any like deal breakers that would stop consensus. Once we address those, we'll go sort of paragraph by paragraph and wordsmith and do grammar edits and that type of thing without content. So Josh, if do you want to put the Word document up on the screen, or do you want me to redline as we go?
I can do that. Do note when we have Jacob and Chris and Q. If Jacob wants to speak while I get this up.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Jacob. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, so I don't want to, torpedo this advice with this comment, but there's one other giant source of transuranic waste we have at Hanford, and that is there's about 8 or 10 underground storage tanks that are storing transuranic waste, and the WIP permit currently says that they won't accept any waste that's being stored in an underground tank. And I'm not sure what the container it's being stored in has to do with anything, but advice would be to give the ORP advice to remove this transuranic waste out of tanks and store them in some other receptacle, so that WIP is willing to take that transuranic, because apparently the receptacle it's stored in matters to them. So that's just a thought.
We include that in the advice that there is transuranic waste stored in tanks, but in the WIP permit there is a table, and in that table it lists all of the tanks, which basically it says it's basically if the waste was in those tanks at the time of this permit, it can't go to WIP. So that's a whole nother discussion, and it would have to be a negotiation with WIP and the state of New Mexico at the time of the next permit revision, so 2033, 2032. But right now, it specifically excludes waste that's in the tank farms at Hanford, and it lists all of the big tanks at Hanford as being banned from Carlsbad.
If they're stored there today, we're stuck then, according to the current permit. Okay, that is what it is.
Yeah. Who's next? Chris Sutton?
Yeah, this is Chris. I just have a couple general things. Nothing I have to say is going to stop consensus, but these are just some general things. And I should preface this by saying that true waste disposition is far from my area of expertise and knowledge. So take that into account with these general comments. In reading through the advice generally a couple of times, I'm kind of left with an impression that this is nice to have, but not really necessary. There's not a sense of urgency or necessity that comes through, especially given the time frames that the whip is likely to be open and things are done. It's just a feeling I have, nice but not really necessary to get done right away. This type of advice. Other thing is, I think you talk about the M91 milestones a number of times in here, and somewhere up front, it would be nice to have a sentence or so just to say what they are. They're not defined anywhere in this advice, really. So I went and looked it up. The third thing I have to this generally is in one of the references, you referenced the latest true waste plan, Rev 25, that I guess has to be updated annually per one of the milestones. And while the advice calls for some additional plans or updates, it doesn't come through why this plan isn't adequate. I looked at it this morning. It's 110 pages. There's a lot of information in there. And I didn't read line for line, but I think, and I doubt that a lot of the people that look at this advice are going to look up that plan and read through it either. So I think a couple sentences would say, well, we have this plan, it's updated annually, but it doesn't address this and this and this. So these are just a couple of the thoughts that I have in reading this. Nice but not necessary. Why is the current annual waste plan lacking, or what does it need to do? Why do we need more plans? And just define what the M91 milestones are. And I think, Tom, in your introduction, you said something that is clearer than what the plan says. We have possibly 45,000, wherever that number came from, cubic meters of possible true waste that need to be dug up that just aren't covered anywhere, and they need to be. As plainly as you said it right there, I think you could say it equally plainly in this advice. And that's all I have. And like I said, nothing I said is going to stop us going forward from consensus. Just my general thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. The timeliness is definitely hard to convey here, but Carlsbad is writing the legacy waste plan, or legacy true waste plan. And they want to have that a draft of it done by they're going to do like more public comment in June and July, and then they've only got a year or so to finalize their plan. So that's the timeliness. We want to make sure we get all of our RSVPs in for that plan.
Well, I think that sense of timing maybe doesn't come through as clearly as what you just said.
Okay. All right. Well, we can look at that when we're wordsmithing then. Richard, I think you were next.
Yeah, I had to come and leave again. I guess I have two concerns, and okay, of everyone here, I have the most experience physically handling true waste. Not that's, but also at PFP. What's not clear, and I think we've emphasized in the comments, is the M92, right?
M91.
Milestone, not M91 milestone, is a mixed waste milestone, and it has nothing to do with pure true waste. I know personally, I have generated at PFP straight true waste. It's not mixed, it's true. And so it isn't clear that the M91 milestone covers, because ecology doesn't have authority over straight true waste.
Right.
And so we've asked for clarification in this, and they keep using the term which we used in the beginning, Transuranic /M waste, which sort of muddles the waters. And I appreciate the fact that we're separating them as two different categories, those that have an EPA sticker on them, those that don't. The most important thing is, some of the stuff, yeah, we put EPA stickers on it, and we just didn't want to argue the point whether it was true or not, mixed or not. Relative to the tank waste, you're saying they call out the big tanks. There's also a lot of ancillary tanks. I know I put 3 kilograms of plutonium over to the tanks in the farms that I don't think ever left the receiving tank, didn't go into the storage tank. So
I'm pretty sure they call it just the 177 tanks. So
okay, so some of the ancillary tanks to clean up might still qualify to go to WIP. The only other one is we still have in the advice to not put the blend down material, give the blend down material priority over the non-blend down. And we failed to put the low-hanging fruit advice in there, in that we don't recommend that they try and get the most plutonium out of off Hanford rather than just simply the volume of waste, because true waste comes in 2 flavors. Oh, never mind, and oh my God. That's it. It's either 200 grams per drum, or it's a tenth of a gram per drum. And so I'd like to see the 200 gram per drum ones, or forms that are of that detail, get shipped in priorities. But I don't, and I don't care whether it's mixed or non-mixed. I can tell you, if it's true waste, the hazard's not the mix. And so that's my only 2 points, the only concern I have with the advice.
yeah, and that's something I neglected to mention earlier, is so in addition to the retrievably stored, which is post 1970, and the pre 1970 waste, there's also this pure transuranic material. And that is not in the project management plan for the M91 milestones at all. Richard, you had a reference for that material, which I didn't write down at the time, and there's a placeholder in the advice for that reference. If you can remember, or provide the link for it.
The reference for
the quantity of pure true that I think it was a HAB presentation from
I have
before,
that
before my time.
presentation. Yeah. See where I'm looking in my files.
Okay, so while you're looking, we've got
okay, I'll flag back up when I find it. Okay.
we've got a request to clarify the EM9 what M91 is. We want to maybe add something about remote handled true, and then add some sense of urgency. So we want to start at the background and work through and see if we can get those things in here. Or do we have any other early comments? Chris, are you back in queue, or are you just still having your hand up?
This is Rob Davis here.
Hey.
I'm in a car driving it, so I don't have a computer.
Okay.
I actually I liked the last version of the advice, and you certainly get my consensus vote on it. And just letting you know that's where I come from. Thank you.
Appreciate the input. I see Dan, you have your hand up, so let's.
Yes, thank you. Just a general question. How many cubic meters does that count towards in terms of how much is in a drum, or is it the drum itself? I thought at one time they decided to discount the dunnage, so it'd be nice
Yeah.
to have a sense of how many
And-
cubic meters we're talking about, because that's where the limits are.
And that's a good point, because WIP counts volume as the transuranic waste in the drum. And I'm fairly sure that the project management plan in M91 counts it as the drum itself, or as all of the mixed material, not just the transuranic material. So right now, WIP is expecting, I think it's something like 16,000 cubic meters from Hanford total. We have, and that's our M91 waste. We also have the non-M91 waste, which is the CERCLA waste, which has to get dug up still. And the best estimate in the project management plan is about 45,000 cubic meters of that. But we won't know until it's dug up and quantified or characterized. So that's sort of part of the rationale for asking for this true waste system plan type document, so we can get a better estimate of that CERCLA waste and also include an estimate of the pure true that Richard was talking about. So WIP knows really what we have.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start at the background and we'll come to the summary last and update it accordingly.
Okay.
Okay, so anything in the first paragraph for clarification, grammar, word choice, punctuation? Okay, shout if you got something. Second paragraph. Okay, that's where we talk about the transuranic waste from tanks and Hanford tank farms can't be disposed. And we added a clarification there that Pam had. So transuranic wastes from the waste management area around the tank farms can go to WIP. It's just the waste that's in the tanks that cannot go to WIP. So that was a good clarification that Pam had. All right, third paragraph. Okay. All right, so fourth paragraph is when we start talking about the M91 milestone. Does anybody have a good elevator pitch for what one sentence for what the M91 milestone is? I'm looking at you, ecology. Um,
In the waste management plan, it defines it, I think, fairly succinctly in either the executive summary or in chapter 1 about the plan. There's one or two sentences that you might be able to take from there.
okay. Let's see if we can pull that up real quick. There's the link from Richard. Okay, so that was a committee of the whole. No. From 2010. So we'll have to figure out how to cite that. All right. Does anybody else have the project management plan open? Okay, here's the actual M91 milestones. And it doesn't have a good description. Okay, can we just put a placeholder in there for plain language description of M91 milestone? Unless Chris has it.
I have it open, and on page 1-2, there's one simple sentence that might serve. It says the M091 milestone series sets a deadline of 2050 to remove M091 trum waste from the Hanford site. That might do it.
Okay.
And that's at the very top, the first sentence at the top of page 1-2.
Okay, Richard?
Yeah, but again, it says trum waste.
Right.
Because it's LDR waste. So
Right.
it's dealing only with mixed waste. And possibly we could focus that, my comment about we want the most plutonium offsite. Maybe we can address the advice towards ecology as well as to facilitate the shipment of true waste, as well as mixed waste. I'm just saying is I'd hate for us just to leave a whole bunch of. I mean, the true waste is probably the most dangerous of the stuff over some of the mixed waste that they would ship.
Yeah. So maybe a sentence before this post 1970 waste, we could add that the M91 milestone. Chris, are you able to put that, copy it and put it in the chat?
I just closed it.
Oh no.
Can you remind us what it's from?
Yeah, it's on page 1-2. The first sentence at the top of the page.
Of the project management plan.
Yeah, Rev 25. And that's the plan that's in one of the references at the end of this advice.
Okay. And then Richard, the sort of the bottom of the page there, that sentence, there's additional potential transuranic waste not mixed with hazardous materials that is not included in the PMP. That's where your reference would go. That committee of the whole talk. Okay. Okay, so with the clarification on sort of plain language for M91 and the inclusion of that reference, which brings in the non-contact handled pure true, any other tweaks for this paragraph? It's a long one, so I'm still here. I'm just letting the dog out real quick.
Tom, do you want to say that somewhere in here that 45,000 cubic meters currently is not part of the legacy waste or something like that? Or that would be, trying to set the stage for it's really critical in terms of legacy waste to get this in it.
Yeah, there's Carlsbad maintains like a true inventory. And it might be a good place to reference the true inventory, and that the 45,000 cubic meters isn't on there. And I see, Bob, you got your hand up.
Were you going to add something in the first sentence of this paragraph talking about the non-mixed waste, to mention it there clearly? I thought you said you were going to do that, but I have not seen anything there yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe after the first paragraph, after the first sentence, because the true /m covers that, but it gets blended a lot. All right, what about something like that after the first sentence?
Looks good to me.
Okay. I don't remember if the Carlsbad document was a reference in here or not. Yes, it is. The True Waste Disposal Plan. So that's currently reference 10. So when we get there, let's see if it makes sense to move it up to where we talk about that 45,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else in this paragraph other than that one note to maybe move up that reference? And okay, let's move on. Okay, so this is basically saying, this takes a long time, so we need to act early or else we won't be able to act. And then let's look at the last paragraph of the background. Any comments, suggestions, wordsmiths? Where do we cite the where is reference 10? Is that looks like it's floating. So yeah, let's figure out where that goes. Richard.
Looking at that paragraph, and can we think about, I know it'll be awkward, but should we, change the from reference and just go ahead and spell out true and true mixed so that it's clear we're talking about both of them? Because, the true /m is what's used in the management plan, but that's really not, I don't know if that's what they're talking about because they keep using that true /m.
So I think when we're talking about it early on, it makes sense because we're talking about the PMP. But once we get down to this paragraph, yeah, swapping that out with transuranic and mixed transuranic waste would be, I think, a good clarification and call out the fact that pure true isn't necessarily incorporated. Chris.
Yeah, Tom, in the middle of this paragraph, you have the sentence that reads, "The remaining true/M waste will stay at Hanford until a pathway for disposal is identified." After that sentence, one could consider saying, if as much as 25,000 cubic meters of additional legacy true waste is excavated and not being able to dispose of it, the WIP, that presents a major problem, blah, 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 particularly since in 2020, the National Academy of Science, so on and so forth. But
Okay.
that might be, after that sentence, remaining true, that might be a good place to stick in the 45,000 cubic meters, saying that this could be a really major problem.
Yeah, so even just if I'll put it in chat.
And then you could link it to the fact that already maybe 10 to 50% in the following sentence might not be able to dispose of it with.
Something like that, Chris?
Yeah, but maybe get for the 45,000, if as much as.
Well, it could be more than 45,000 because the 45,000 doesn't include that pure true that Richard was talking about.
Okay. If as much as or more than.
If 45,000 cubic meters or more.
Yeah.
So after the first if in that red sentence.
After the first.
Because that will
Yeah.
give it a
If
sense of
45,000 cubic
necessity.
meters or more of. Okay. Richard?
It's just gonna, just for the clarification, when we're talking cubic meters, we're talking Hanford cubic meters, not necessarily.
Yes.
And so, should we have an advice that we're on the same page of cubic? I
It's
mean,
there. It's in the, it's it. We're going to get there next paragraph.
all right. Well, I'm just, physical. We could use the term physical because I'm certain that what WIP is really trying to get at is they have, from their nuclear safety standpoint, they have a certain Curie content that they can bring in, and that's probably part of the mechanism.
Chris, is your hand still up?
No.
Okay. Mia?
We need some commas in this new sentence. So after mixed true, between that and which, and then after milestone.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. Everyone good with that addition? Okay. Let's move on to the advice.
Okay. quick clarification. Was it agreed that we'd be changing these throughout the background? True.
Not throughout the background. It'll be, I think it makes sense to call it TRUM when we're talking about the project management plan, but not necessarily for the site. So
Okay.
we'll swap some of them and make sure that everyone here is okay with that as an editorial choice, to not be included in the consensus part.
All right.
We'll work offline for that. Okay. So we start off by tying this to the HAB's core values, which is a preference for remove, treat, dispose when it's practicable. We restate that and maybe this makes sense to make this not abbreviated here again. And then the advice point 1, which is we want the TP agencies to do a true waste system plan with potential new milestones, providing that to Carlsbad so that it can serve as Hanford's legacy waste plan. And then here's your should consider including estimates for the volume of true, excluding the container it is stored in, to be consistent with the nomenclature at WIP. So that way we have apples to apples comparison. Mia.
I just have some grammatical changes. So we need a hyphen between pre and 1970s in the first sentence, yeah. And then we refer to the plan. I think we should name the plan since we have project management plan in here and true waste system plan. We're referring to the true waste system plan as I understand it. Are you in agreement, Tom?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I accidentally muted instead of unmuting. Okay. Any other notes on advice point 1? Bob?
Minor item there, you have true hyphen waste lowercase system plan above, and that's not what you have here. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, which one's right?
Okay, yep. Good
We'll
enough,
do
thanks.
that. Consistency is important. All right, Chris.
Yeah, Tom, in the waste management plan, the PMP, it gives a list of potential CERCLA sites and OUs that could have true in them. And none of those, under any current milestones or funding scenarios, are likely to be excavated until the early to mid 30s. That's a long time from now. And I'm wondering if that might not fit in somewhere. The fact that we may not know for another 10 years.
Yeah, and we actually included that as one of the sentences, one of the paragraphs in the background.
But I think we could maybe make it a little bit more explicit.
Yeah, we say characterization, decision, and excavation of the potential TRUM waste will take a significant amount of time, which is compounded by the 3-year federal budgeting cycle. So,
and currently are not targeted to be excavated, remediated until the 1930 framework or 2030 framework timeframe.
I mean, we could change, instead of take a significant amount of time, we could say take decades. And that would sort of build in that 2030 framework, because I'm not positive that those remediations are going to happen in the 2030s, but EPA is not on the call, so I don't know. I mean, we do want to try to, we're trying to do a lot with this advice, and I want to make sure that we're not putting in so much detail that we're going to lose the rest of the board, because we know about this stuff, but the rest of the board might not. You know, they don't necessarily care about 2030s. But it's a good point. Would decades work, or do we want to try to go details with like?
Decades is okay.
Okay, so back on page 2 at the bottom, Josh. One more, I guess it got bumped down to the next page. So instead of a significant amount of time, change that to decades. Okay.
Yeah.
Bob and Richard, I see you both have your hands up. Bob? Oh, okay. It was a relic hand. Okay, Richard, let's go down to advice 2.
I just want to give me my personal opinion is leaving buried dogs lie or is probably preference. I'm not, if we can't ship it, I don't want to dig it up personally. If you get it above grade, then it's after the experience at PFP, what do we do when we had a problem up above grade? We buried it for a period of time. So below grade is much better than above grade if you can't ship it.
Yeah, and that's at potential odds with the fact that there's a record of decision for some of these waste sites, and so that the stuff that isn't true needs to get dug up, but the stuff that's true needs to get stored safely. So, is it safest to store it underground where it is, or in a container? So, I think that's a tricky bit, and I don't know that we want to have that debate in this advice. But it's a good discussion for sure. And maybe that fits in with bullet point advice 2. We want the agencies to determine whether there's going to evaluate whether additional retrieval milestones make sense.
And makes sense relative to shipping capabilities or something of that nature. But
Right.
just,
And I guess really the reason this advice is important, and you're helping me if this goes to May, this will help for the presentation, is we're trying to make sure that WIP is planning for this, and if WIP isn't planning for this, it might close before it gets there. So we want to make sure WIP has all the information they need so they can accommodate everything we want to send them, if possible.
that's great words if we had the beginning of the background.
Yeah. Okay, Mia.
If we've moved on to number 2, I just want to flag that this isn't in the bulleted list in the background, so we need to make sure that gets moved up there as well. And then
Summary.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, summary. And then we'll want to add in the references to 154 and 231 advices.
Mia, what were those 2 advice numbers?
154 and 231. They're right there in the
Okay.
text.
Thank you. I'm not as nimble on this as might be hoped.
Okay. So I just heard that we might want to consider putting some language in either at the front of the advice or at the front of the background that says, it's important to know what we have and then communicate what we have so Carlsbad can prepare for it. Let's get through here and then we'll see if we can wordsmith if we still have time. Okay. Any questions on 3? And I think, yeah, anytime we're in this advice space, we will change the TRUM to transuranic or mixed transuranic. Or something along those lines. Okay.
You can't see it, but I made a comment.
Yeah, I see it. Excellent. All right. Anything on 4 where we're advising the local office to request DOE to develop a plan for identifying additional repository locations? Chris.
You might preface it by saying, in the event that not all Hanford legacy waste is able to be disposed of at WIP, then the board advises DOE. So I think it needs to have some preface. If we can't get it to WIP, then we need an alternative.
Well, and that's actually in the WIP permit as well. The WIP permit calls for DOE to find a second location because they don't want to take it all.
Well, maybe that should be put in there then.
Hey, Tom, this is Rob.
Yep.
Isn't this a responsibility of Congress?
I think it would be. Yes, it is. It's congressionally authorized, but I anticipate that Congress would want DOE to do the groundwork before they authorize it, so they don't get into problems that they've had with other sites.
You know, I understand that it's going to be a complex process, but
yeah,
unless we can't just charge our local DOE with encouraging something. I think that we maybe would say that DOE and headquarters should be pressing the legislators to consider an alternative facility. But just saying our local office, I don't think they have the power to do that.
Yeah, and that was the dilemma we had was because we are advising the TPA agencies, not headquarters per se. But really, we're looking for a transparent and equitable process to identify the repository locations. We're not saying go pick a repository location. That's the nuance there. But yeah, I get that.
I didn't quite see the nuance in that, other than, they're so compartmentalized that this thing certainly has to go to our legislative representatives. They need some action. They need to commission the DOE to go look for something. Until that happens, I don't see DOE doing anything.
Does it hurt to ask?
All right.
I mean, this because this gets, for reference, this document will get sent to the legislative, representatives of Washington and Oregon. So, it'll be there.
Yeah, okay. I think we should, though, recognize the fact that this is bigger than our local DOE.
Absolutely. This is a pie in the sky ask, but I feel like it's an important one to at least get on the record somewhere.
Okay,
Okay.
well, like I said, I won't step in the way of this advice. I think it's important, and the fact that we have talked about this for over a year and a half, I think it's important to get it out. So, thank you.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the input, and if and when this passes, let's definitely make sure we talk about that in May to make sure that everybody knows that, this is a stretch.
Right, right. There might be a better way of saying it. That's all.
Yeah. Richard.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I was coming back and reflecting on the discussions we've had with Susan is, we're supposed to give actionable advice. And is this truly actionable for DOE? They're probably preaching to the choir, so to speak. And, when should the thing start? I mean, WIP's going to be open for another 20 years. It'll probably take 20 years to find one, but, we, people will kick that can down the road forever. So will Congress. I guess I personally think it dilutes the overall focus of what we're doing by adding the advice. I mean, we could move it into the background type of, suggestions that planning should begin.
My vision or my concept here is our local DOE folks can hand this advice to headquarters and fulfill that requirement. I mean, that is actionable. They give this advice to headquarters and say, hey, the HAB thinks that you should do this. And then they're done. Pretty easy to do.
Well, I guess rather than say develop a plan, which is another document which they would have to do, is just drop the develop A and just say plan for a transparent.
Okay.
Does that make sense? That softens it.
Absolutely, that works.
You aren't asking for another piece of paper and kill another tree.
Anybody else object to that deletion? Mia? Oh, there was, and there's someone else in queue that I can't see. So after Mia, then someone else.
I mean, they're tasked already with developing a plan. I mean, you've said that already, Tom, that it's in the new permit. So we're not, I mean, I like this advice point. I like to keep it simple. But it's showing that, they need to start now because it's going to take a really long time to find an additional repository. So I liked it how it was before, and I think it should stay. But I mean, I'm good with,
But
taking.
it's not the same. It's not the same plan.
What if we say, instead of plan for, we say pursue or conduct? One or other of those words, pursue or conduct. That's more actionable.
Okay. I agree, but it's not the plan we're asking for above would not include
Correct.
discussing where to put where WIP number 2 is.
Correct. Yeah, this is a separate thing.
We're just planting a seed here. We're not, killing a tree.
Absolutely. Okay, someone has their hand up before Chris Sutton, but I can't see who it is. Who is that?
Yes, it was me.
Oh, Dan.
I don't know if this is a good time. Yeah, this is a good time. I mean, some of the stuff will end up in glass, and the glass will go to deep geological disposal. Is this a good time to advocate, or should we talk about starting to advocate for non-commingling and not get the Cold War stuff mixed up with the spent fuel, and it might be politically more feasible to dispose of the Cold War and not commingle it with the spent fuel as far as getting it through Congress.
So you're talking about the high-level waste repository and the transuranic material that's in tanks?
Yeah, going to glass or wherever it is and putting it in glass also. I mean, we're talking about putting all kinds of stuff in that glass. So
Yeah, I think we want to focus on the transuranic portion for this advice and not creep the scope too much. But I hope that whatever repository they pick is going to be a repository for everything, including true, but that's a fingers crossed.
yeah, politically, I think it's probably easier to cite a disposal site for Cold War waste than will be for spent fuel.
Yep. Okay. Chris?
Yeah, and advice point 4, what does equitable mean? What is an equitable process? Equitable to who?
It's basically the consent-based citing. It's there's a whole school of what equitable is, and
But is it necessary? Why not just simply a transparent process to identify?
well,
Yeah.
you can have a transparent process of a steamroller coming towards you.
Right.
An
And that
equitable
may be what happens.
a transparent and equitable process is there's a steamroller coming towards me, and I have the option to stop it if it's going to kill me. That's equitable towards me, right? So
Well, I'm afraid if you have the word equitable in there, there's a whiff of environmental justice that might be associated with it.
absolutely,
And I
there's
don't think we want to go down that way.
I think we absolutely have to have environmental justice in everything we do. It's there's no reason not to. We're not going to go steal someone's land over an aquifer for WIP 2. It's going to have to be, done in the process of the day, which includes consent-based citing and environmental justice and EJ 40. All of that's going to have to be in there. I mean,
Well, my advice is to eliminate the word equitable.
I don't think it adds. It may make you feel better, but it doesn't address. We're planting the seed of, those are constraints that are going to be placed on the process anyway. That's why people
I
say
think it's important to acknowledge that it is a priority. I'm on the issue manager team. I'm not supposed to fight hard for something, but I think equitable is something we should be incorporating into our words more, not less.
except you can't apply the equitable until you at least even begin to find sites.
Right, but we're not telling them to plan anymore. And I think if we were saying make a plan, then we could take off equitable. But now we're telling them to pursue something. We're telling them to pursue a process, and that process should be transparent and equitable. I mean, if that word would kill the advice, I could live with it, but I think it's an important word to include. Someone else could speak, but that's just my opinion.
Knowing that it's important to some people on the IM team, would anybody object to the advice if it was included?
No,
Sounds
I
like
would not object.
we can live with it, but we don't love it as a group. Is that accurate?
I think for me it is.
Okay. And we can, if it comes up at the full board, we can have this discussion again and
Right.
have another chance. to refine it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, let's be realistic.
I
Whoever
was just
ends
gonna
up
point
with
out,
this, whoever ends up with this in their backyard is not going to feel like it was equitable. So, I mean, that's where it comes back. It's, reason whips where whip is there's nobody's backyard. The reason site in Texas is it's in nobody's backyard. So we're going to run out of people's backyards that don't have anybody around them. So
Yeah. Well, but equity in the process can account for the folks who don't want it in their backyard, and it just makes sure that their voice is heard and they're appropriately compensated or something like that. Okay.
so again, let me point out that it's a buzzword that we're all using a lot, so I have no problems with being in there. The second thing is that people realize that the Yucca Mountain site would have transuranics in it. They're storing spent fuel or disposing of spent fuel, which is full of transuranics. So, we can't really, parse this out any more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Develop a facility to take it. That's what we want.
Okay.
Thanks.
It seems like we've gotten through the background and the advice. Do we want to head up to the summary and make sure we've gotten that consistent, and then we can go back and figure out if it makes sense to add sort of the elevator pitch for identifying what we have and telling Carlsbad so they can prepare for it. Okay. Mia had the potential milestones bullet. Can you throw words out there, Mia?
I thought Josh just copied and was going to paste it in there.
In case that was the choice, I was ready for it.
Okay.
I mean, we can make it shorter.
Yeah, maybe just after as needed.
Sure.
That way we're not throwing references in the summary. Okay, so let's head up to the top and make sure we get through all the paragraphs at least once.
Okay, you got 7 minutes on this agenda item.
Okay, anything on that first paragraph? Richard.
yeah, I'm thinking, looking at the subject, maybe we don't want. Yeah, we can do the whole purpose of this is to plan for the disposition of Hanford's true waste. It's no longer engaged in the national discussion, correct?
You're right. Yeah,
Let's
the last year's version was engaging in the discussion because the permit was still being
Right.
written. So
proper planning for transatlantic
Transuranic.
I can't say it.
We're talking about the Queen Mary.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but I think that hits the why are we doing this advice?
Yeah, of
I think that
Hanford's.
can. Does that make,
Yeah.
I think that answers your little spiel before.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge help to really set the tone. All right, and so that first paragraph would then be the elevator pitch that we were talking about earlier, I think. And Dan.
I was just looking at the word proper, and maybe we could just delete that, or improved. Proper sounds like it's been improper.
How about comprehensive?
Okay. Anything but proper. Thanks.
Okay. Subject is good. Dan, is your hand up again, or did you? All right, we go. All right. First paragraph's good. I see no hands. Second paragraph. I'll just note that this will be potentially the last HAB advice that is able to reference RL and ORP. Unless we pass something in September. Okay. The bullets are summary bullets. Any questions or discussions there? We'll modify some of those trums to be transuranic and transuranic mixed. Okay, last bullet in the summary. We changed plan for to, what is it, pursue. Develop a plan for changes to EM pursue. Chris.
On the third bullet, we say define legacy waste as any true M. Would it be better to replace the word any with all?
Yeah. And we'll make sure that's consistent in the advice as well.
Gonna make a comment, but apparently I didn't close out the previous one.
Okay. All right. I see a hand. Whose is it?
Larry.
Larry.
Tom, also, that same bullet point, do we need to say pre-1970 potential trum, or can we drop the word potential?
The pre-1970 material doesn't become transuranic waste until it gets dug up and assayed.
Okay.
So it's defined as pre-1970 potential because it's probably true, but we won't know until it gets dug up.
I gotcha.
So it's semantics. Okay. We've got some grammar tweaks. We're going to change some trums to words, and we're going to make sure the references are up to date. Let's go. We've got a couple seconds left. Let's go down to the background again, and that 45,000 question down there. Do we want to reference? Did we cover the question there about the disposal plan and that material not being in there later? I think we added a sentence that took care of that. Right, Chris?
What are you asking?
So you had mentioned that this might be a good spot to add the 45,000 cubic meters that WIP doesn't know about, or that isn't on WIP's disposal plan.
Yeah, okay, I lost you, Tom. Where are you in the advice?
Right where the cursor is. Approximately 45,000 cubic meters of the circular trum. And then maybe Josh, if you can scroll so that's towards the top of the screen, you might be able to see the stuff we added. Keep going.
It's okay there.
Okay. All right. So we'll make sure all the references are appropriately timed and numbered. All right. With that, does anyone object, or can everyone live with the advice as written and edited to move forward to May? Okay.
Yeah.
Bob.
Does anyone object?
Just one thing on your item for reference one, the way it's defined. I'd sent you some recommendations on changing that. I'm not gonna. The problem is, it's inconsistent definitions of true waste.
Okay. So we want to make sure we use DOE's definition there.
Okay, and there is not a good enough. Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification. And yeah, we don't want to be technically inaccurate. Okay, so it seems like we have consensus. If anyone feels the need to withhold consent, let us know. You could send an email or shout out now. And if not, we'll plan on getting this on the agenda for May. Thanks for everyone's work on this. It's been a slog.
All right.
Do we have other agenda items for this meeting?
Well, we have committee business.
Okay.
So the first portion of that would be revisiting CaRM's vice chair election. And where we left off, Tom was elected as chair to serve starting October 1st. Congratulations again. And at that point in time, we had no nominations for vice chair. It was decided that we'd put out a call to the committee by email, then again have happenings, and revisit that now. In that time, we received no nominations. How would you like to proceed?
Well, it seems like we float until we have a nominee. That's what I would recommend. And we'll do some legwork to get someone to to be willing to serve. But we can't sort of conscript a vice chair. Chris?
Hey, last year in the Tank Waste Committee, we elected Rob Davis the chair when he wasn't even there.
But he at least said he wanted to do it, right? Or would be willing to do it.
Well, we called him on the phone and twisted his arm.
Chris, you got your hand up.
I'm listening.
I'm wondering if we could put out a call to some of the new members and say, hey, this is a good way to come as being a vice chair to get yourself engaged in the process of the HAB and what the HAB does, but maybe especially focus on some of the new members who came on board this past October.
Yeah, I think we'll do some lobbying during May when we have some hallway conversations. And then maybe in June we can elect someone and then they can just stick around for the leadership workshop. Fingers crossed. Richard.
Yeah, just when you try and twist arms, just tell them you don't have to know anything. You don't have to do much. You'll get a couple extra emails. And you don't have to be straightforward. You can lie.
I try not to. I really do. Okay. Other committee business. I'm going to go ahead and say that we didn't get any comments on the meeting minutes that went around. So we'll go ahead and adopt those.
Okay, so you have two unadopted sets of meeting minutes, one for your committee in March, and then a joint meeting between LIDS and CaRM in January.
I'm good with both, and then LIDS can sign and seal the joint meeting.
Richard, do you wish to certify your January meeting minutes?
I'm not quite sure how many of the LIDS members are here. I see Dan here. But yeah, I would think we would do that. I was going to ask you, is there any LIDS business that needs to be conducted? So I'm fine with the minutes that came out. And let's put them into the book. I'm not going to wordsmith them.
All right. And then we had an action item review. For CaRM's action items, they were mostly setting the agenda for this meeting and readdressing the vice chair election, which we've done. For LIDS, coming out of their March meeting, there was a traffic engineering study requested that has since been distributed to the committee for review. And it's my understanding that we will be revisiting that at their June meeting. And also, as agreed upon at last meeting, we'll extend an invitation or poll of interest regarding an HWEC tour open house during the May full board meeting.
Let me jump in there on the engineering study. Lindsay, it did not address any of the aspects relative to the fire station issue in the 300 area. And so it would, when we come back to the discussion, if we can see if we can supplement in that aspect, would be.
I'm way ahead of you, Richard. So for June, we'll have Kyle Swenson with HMIS, who will provide an additional update on the traffic engineering study. And in addition to Kyle, we also have Marty Yakowicz. He is going to address 200 East, formerly the 300 area fire station. So
okay.
Both of those briefings will be coming to June.
For those not on the LIDS, the study primarily looked at upgrading roadways on Hanford site, including 4-laning the road out to 2 East, as well as adding additional guard gates at the Y.
So speaking of June, we have an agenda item on here for discussing June's agenda? Is that accurate?
We've sort of blended into that, yes.
Okay.
So what the department has confirmed for June is we have an IDF briefing from Carmen Rodriguez, as well as a WESIF update from Gary Piles.
Okay. That's awesome. We also want to make sure we have some space to talk through the draft work plan in committee. Do we know, I'm sure you guys are working hard on the TPA agency's draft, but do we know when that's expected to come out?
The agencies are meeting mid-May, I believe, to finalize that, and then we should be able to provide that to each subcommittee. Brian or Roberto, I don't know if you guys are on. Anything else to add to that?
No, that's my recollection too.
Okay. And then as far as timing of the committees, I know we had moved the leadership workshop. Did we ever finalize which committees are meeting when? And when the workshop is?
I believe everything was shifting up one day. But let me look. So then CaRM and LIDS would be June 3rd. COE and TWIST would be June 4th. And then the leadership workshop would be June 5th.
Okay.
Mia, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just curious if the WESIF briefing will be happening at Massif or not.
At Massif?
Yeah, like a tour. We had talked about a tour of Massif and having the briefing then.
So I do have the request for the tour. Let me get some more further clarification, but the briefing itself is not anticipated to be held at Massif.
Okay.
I will follow up on that right after this call.
And Chris?
Chris.
Yeah. Tom, in the weekly update that was issued last Thursday, there was a link to the RIFS work plan for WA1, all 1,880 pages of it. And I think it would be worthwhile somewhere down the road, maybe getting a briefing on it. My concern is that there is a lot in that plan that P&L is going to do, which is just straight research. And my own personal opinion is it's going to add years and beaucoup dollars, aside from just plain characterization of the waste. And my concern is that it's going to serve as a template for SW2 and other operable units too. That's going to really stretch out the time frame for characterization. And I'm wondering just how necessary all of that is. But that might be worth at least some committee discussion, and possibly some briefings on it.
Are you volunteering to do a book report during open forum?
A book report?
Yeah, because that might be a way to get the conversation started, just to have a group of us read it and discuss it and come up with some summary bullets. Not an IM team formal, but just a book club.
Heck, I'm retired. Reading 880 pages, that's a full-time job for a month.
Fair. Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure we have some space to discuss though.
All right. Is there anything else that needs to be covered in regard to our upcoming meetings?
I still have the request for risk and we're still working on it. So that one has not fallen off my radar. Just wanted to let that be known.
All right.
Yeah, just want to make sure we're getting everything the agencies want us to do. So
Understood. This one is a little bit more tricky, but I'm working on it.
absolutely. Okay. So like what Chris just did, any other ideas for topics for discussion next year? Send them over to me, and I will make sure they get added to our list when we're talking through the work plan in June. Yeah, like WA1 characterization. I heard SW2 in there too. So we can make sure we have space to discuss those in the coming years within reason.
And what was really helpful for me, Tom, is for you to provide that list prior to the leadership workshop to me, so then I could track it down with our SMEs. And so I'm hopeful that we can follow that same process again this year.
Yes, so everybody, as soon as you have an idea, send it to me, and flood my inbox with things that I can put on a bulleted list for Lindsay and Ryan. Okay. Chris, is your hand up again, or did you?
No.
All right. Is there anything else that we haven't discussed that we need to discuss, Josh?
That is the last agenda item.
Richard, you got something?
No?
I just want to be clear that the be a conference in Kennewick, bringing together all the sites talking about their energy proposals going forward for the and be occurring the 7th through the 9th, which is I plan to attend on the 7th, but to the HAB on the 7th, but I probably won't be there on the 8th unless you guys need to
We need
a
quorum.
vote. Someone need a quorum. I don't think my backup can be there either. So
Okay. Well, we'll use her as a phone a friend if we need quorum. And just it came out while we were working on this advice that there is going to be a management team from Carlsbad touring Hanford while we're meeting. So I've asked to extend them an invitation just so they can be in the room and maybe raise their hands if they have some input.
Well, they may be here to attend our conference as well.
Yeah,
so.
they might be across the hall, so we won't steal from you guys. But you know, if the people we're trying to get engaged in the conversation are in the room, it would be really awesome. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order, Josh, Lindsay?
You've
Nothing
made
for
your
me.
final statements. I think we can close out when Lindsay's ready.
If you are a primary member as of October 1st and you're a member of CaRM and you have any questions about leadership and you want to have a conversation with me, give me a call and I can talk to you. I was vice chair for 2 years before I was chair, so it's a good way to get your feet wet. That's all I got.
All right. Lindsay, would you like
Thank
to
you,
close us out?
everyone. Yeah, this meeting
Thank
is
you.
adjourned. Have a great day.
Will do.
Have a good lunch, everybody.
Bye all.